Do not watch these blank screens at night. 3 blank screen horror stories. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. The Midnight Knock. I moved out of the city to escape the grind and to get my sanity back, trading it for the peace and quiet of the suburbs. But now, I don't sleep. Not after what's been happening. It started shortly after I moved in. I'd just crawled into bed when I heard it. A knock at the front door. 3 sharp thumps echoing through the stillness. I checked the clock. Strange, I thought, but maybe it was a lost driver or a neighbor needing help. When I opened the door, there was nothing but the cold night air and an empty porch. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same knock. This time, I stayed by the window, watching. I wanted to catch whoever was doing it, but when the knock came, there was no one there. Just the moonlight on my empty driveway. By the 3rd night, I was on edge. Whoever, or whatever, was doing this wasn't leaving footprints in the snow. That's when I decided to set up my old security camera on the porch, thinking it would catch something. The following morning, I reviewed the footage. At exactly 12:04 a.m., the screen went blank for 30 seconds. When it came back on, the porch was empty. My heart sank. A malfunction, I thought, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The knocking continued, and every night, the camera blacked out at the same time. Desperation kicked in. I set up a second camera, hidden and facing the door. If the first camera went blank again, I'd still have a clear shot. When I checked the footage the next morning, I'll never forget what I saw. At 12:04 a.m., the outside camera blanked out, as usual, but inside, on the second feed, I saw it. A figure stood at my door, a man, or what was left of one. His clothes were shredded, his skin pale and stretched tight as if he had been frozen solid. He didn't knock, he just stood there, staring directly into the camera. His eyes weren't human. They were too dark, too hollow, and he seemed to stare through the screen, straight at me. And then he smiled. I haven't slept since. The knocks kept coming, but I stopped answering, unplugged the cameras, and packed my things. I moved to a condo building, thinking the added security would help. I alerted the police before I left, but there was nothing they could do. The man hasn't come back. Not yet anyway. But even now, in this new place, I can't shake the feeling. Every night, I catch myself glancing at the door, waiting for the knock, always looking over my shoulder. Some nights, I swear I hear it. 3 sharp knocks, faint and distant. The basement escape. When my roommates and I rented the house, we didn't think much about the landlord's one rule. Don't go in the basement, it's locked for maintenance. It seemed odd, but we figured it was just old pipes or mold. The place was cheap, close to campus, and we didn't want to lose it over something so minor. The first few weeks were normal. We studied, partied, and settled into our routines. But one night, during a massive storm, the power went out. We were sitting in the living room, joking about the creepy vibe of the dark house, when we noticed something strange. A faint light coming from under the basement door. "Hey Jess, isn't that your phone?" my roommate Mark asked. Jess patted her pockets and frowned. "No, I've got mine right here." Curiosity got the better of us. We grabbed a flashlight and pried open the basement door, which wasn't as securely locked as we thought. The stairs creaked as we descended, the smell of damp air growing stronger with each step. At the bottom, in the middle of the concrete floor, was a phone, its screen glowing. The phone wasn't ours. It was dirty, scratched, and recording a video. Mark picked it up, and we huddled around to watch the footage. The first few seconds were shaky, showing what looked like the inside of a crawl space. Then the screen went blank. For a moment, there was silence, until we heard it. Faint breathing, uneven and raspy, followed by a low whisper. "They're coming." The phone slipped from Mark's hands and clattered to the floor. My stomach turned as I scanned the basement. In the dim light, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small opening in the wall, just big enough for someone to crawl through. Jess screamed, and we all turned to see her pointing at a pile of trash in the corner. Food wrappers, water bottles, and dirty blankets were scattered across the floor. Someone had been living here. We bolted upstairs and called the police. When they arrived, they searched the basement thoroughly. That's when they found it, a hidden crawl space leading to an underground area. Inside, there was a mattress, more trash, and several other phones. The landlord admitted that squatters had been using the basement for years. He claimed he thought they were gone, but the look on his face told me he wasn't surprised. We moved out the next day. The rent being so cheap and the landlord being who he was, we weren't worried about breaking the lease or losing too much money. We were sure he would find someone else quickly, but I haven't slept well since. Every time I walk into a new house, apartment, hotel room, or any place I will be sleeping, I check the locks, the basement, the crawl spaces. I can't stop thinking about the whisper on the video. They're coming. The paranormal night shift. Working the night shift at the local convenience store wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. It was usually quiet after midnight, just a few truckers and late-night snack runs. I spent most of my shifts stocking shelves, making coffee, and keeping an eye on the security cameras. That's when I first noticed it. Every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., one of the cameras, the one facing the back aisle, went blank for exactly 60 seconds. At first, I figured it was just a glitch, old tech, bad wiring, something simple like that. But it happened every night without fail. Same camera, same time. After a week, I decided to investigate. I decided to stand in the camera's line of sight during the blackout, just to see if I could figure out what was going on. That night, I waited until 3:14, standing perfectly still in the middle of the aisle. When the clock struck 3:15, the camera feed on the monitor went blank. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, I felt it, a sharp, icy breeze on the back of my neck. It didn't make sense. The doors were locked, and the air conditioning had been off for hours. The chill cut straight through me, and I swear I could hear faint whispering, like someone standing just behind me. I spun around, heart racing, but the aisle was empty. I didn't finish my shift. I told my manager I was sick and left as soon as the sun came up. The next morning, my manager called, saying I should come in to review the footage. I didn't want to, but curiosity won. The blacked out portion of the footage wasn't black anymore. The video didn't black out, but it was fuzzy this time. This time, faint, shadowy figures moved across the screen. They weren't fully human, more like distorted outlines, shifting and flickering. One figure turned towards the camera. Even though it had no distinct features, I felt its gaze. And then I saw myself in the frame, standing in the aisle. I wasn't alone. A second figure, darker and taller, was standing directly behind me. The moment I turned around, it vanished. I quit that same day. My manager thought I was overreacting, but I didn't care. Now, I can't shake the feeling that something followed me home that night. Now at least once a month at 3:15, I wake up cold, hearing faint sounds in the dark. I'm ashamed to admit this, but I now sleep with a nightlight, just in case.